Image size is actually one of the most important things to focus on when building a visual H5P activity or one that relies on multimedia. Just like a Google Doc could be downloaded as a PDF file, or a Word doc is a Word file, H5P also has its own file type. If you look closely in the type column in the content bank, you'll see it's listed as an archive. That means that if you were to download an H5P activity to your computer, it would download functionally as a zip file. One consequence of this approach is that a student's browser needs to download the entire H5P activity before it can be displayed in their browser. If your activity has a lot of images or very large images that have not been optimized for the web, this can cause a significant delay in load times for your students. When it comes to image size and H5P, there are two things that help determine the file size for an image, and that is the size and the resolution. The size can be thought of as the dimensions of your image. In other words, how large and how tall is it? These two images may appear to be exactly the same, but the image on the left is in its original size, and the image on the right has been resized for visual use on the web. The one on the left is actually so large that if you were to zoom into its actual size, you would be able to see this gentleman's pores. So size, or the dimensions of an image, are the first of two things that determine its file size. The second component of an image that determines how large it is as a file is the resolution, or the quality of the image. Every image on your computer is made up of pixels. From a technical perspective, we sometimes call this DPI, or dots per inch. Higher resolution screens, like on newer smartphones, tend to have a much higher DPI, or dots per inch, in their displays, making them capable of displaying much higher quality images. But sometimes it's easy to tell what picture you're looking at without all of those extra pixels. And the resolution of your image plays a very large part in that. If we come back to these two original images, the image on the left has a DPI of 300. Now, you don't have to look up what that means, but practically speaking, that is an excellent resolution if we were going to print this picture. In fact, if we were to print it out, it would be around 20 inches wide. Though 300 DPI is great for print, it is not good for web. For web-based uses, like in an H5P activity in As You Learn, a DPI of 72 is much more appropriate. So if we were to apply what we've learned about the dimensions of an image and the resolution of an image to resize the image on the left to be the same size as the image on the right, these simple changes in both the dimension and resolution will reduce the file size by about 96%. I'm going to share a screencast with you that I recorded about 3 years ago at my last job. And the reason I'm sharing an old screencast with you is because I now have very good internet, but back then I did not. I had created two versions of the exact same H5P activity, one using the original full-size version of the photo that we were just looking at, and another using an optimized version of that photo instead. I'm going to open that large image first, and we'll take a look at how long it takes for that to actually load. I'm going to start talking because it is still loading and I don't want you to think that the video froze. My internet was so bad at that point that I could very rarely do advanced activities like this. In fact, the time it took to load a simple image that had not been optimized for web for me took over 22 seconds. Now let's take a look at how long it took to load the optimized image. As you can see, that loads almost instantly. So while I recognize the technical skills represent a broad spectrum of things that you might be learning to resize images, especially stock photos that you find online, would be an incredibly valuable skill to pick up, and it's actually very simple to do. Both Windows and Mac computers have built-in software freely available that makes it easy for you to take an image and resize both its resolution and its dimensions. And because we cannot guarantee what sort of internet connection an off-campus student at App State will have, we strongly recommend that you optimize these images before you add them into an H5P activity.